Hi, welcome, Geekella here, and today I wanted to explore a little bit of a new medium, a new thing I picked up. I just got these Cretacolor watercolor graphite pencils. I've never used anything like this, but I recently went to a workshop with another artist who was using watercolor graphite, so I thought I would try these out. Brevilay's Cretacolor comes with 6 kind of different earth tone graphite pencils, and they look fun. So we're gonna test these out and see how they look swatched, as well as maybe try a little painting or something with them. So I'm just gonna do this in my sketchbook, and we're just going to try the colors dry and then like wet them. So I don't know if the colors have like names or anything, but this is our lightest color. The thing on the back looks quite light gray, but the pencil itself does look kind of dark. And we'll just kind of swatch all the colors and then wet them and see what happens. They do feel a lot like a pencil, but like soft, so somewhere in between drawing with a graphite pencil and a watercolor pencil. Now I'm interested because like this looks pretty red, but it looks like just graphite on the paper. So I'm wondering if when you wet them, those tones come out more. This one's supposed to be a little more blue, and it does look a little cool toned. And then this last one looks green. I want to say this set was around $20. And here they are, just dry. I have no idea what's going to happen when we wet these, so let's try wetting them. And this is the light, this is the light gray. These are much more fluid than I expected them to be. Like, I felt like I was going to have to work them a little bit more, but these really, I don't know, melted nicely. I am impressed. This is something, as I said, I had never tried anything like this before, the watercolor graphite. I was expecting having to like work the paper more to get them moving, like some watercolor pencils I've used, but this is definitely something different. Oh, this is interesting because this one looked pretty much the same when it was dry, but then wet it does look a lot more of that red toned. So this one's supposed to be blue. Whoa. Was not expecting this one to be so vividly blue. And then our last one here is green. It's interesting that the blue is so vividly blue, but I feel like the other ones are a little bit more subtle in their tone. The green isn't too heavily green, but there are the colors of these graphite pencils. So what I want to try is doing a little painting with them. So I recently went on a trip to North Carolina, and I took this picture. I thought this would be a good one to kind of sketch out with these watercolor pencils. So it's of Quarry Fall, so very, very rocky waterfall near Franklin, Tennessee. And we're going to try that. I did a little painting sketch of it earlier, so this is of that same painting or same photo, and I thought that this palette would be interesting to try out with this very like rocky waterfall. So we'll try it out, kind of go for this same vibe, but with our watercolor graphite pencils. Let me just get a nice fresh page on my sketchbook, so we'll just use this blank page. And this is just my Han Mule sketchbook that I'm quite a big fan of. And let's start by just sketching with our lightest color. And I've never done anything like this before, so it's kind of an experiment. There's this really big tree right here. And then here's our rocks. And our waterfall kind of comes down. There's like a pool of water here. And it kind of comes down. There's a nice big rock. And our water kind of is directed this way. Lots of turbulent water. And we're just going very light because I'm just getting the idea here. And then there's a pool of water here. And a really big rock kind of obstructs the rest of our view of that water. And then we just have rocks. There is one kind of like plant here. Maybe we'll capture that in our painting, as well as this top part is trees. So this top part does have some rocks at the top. And then lots and lots of trees up here. This is forest. Alright, so there's our like basic sketch. Just gonna get a couple more rock shapes and then see how I want to do this. Let's go in with maybe the reddish one. This is an interesting kind of difficult painting medium, kind of using this as somewhere in between sketching and painting, because the color differences aren't really apparent when I'm drawing on the paper in the different colors. They're much more apparent once I wet them, so kind of interesting. Give a rock right here, very red face. And we'll just kind of see what happens here. I feel like just the oils of my hands are smearing it a little bit. Try to be careful touching, but as a left-handed person, sometimes it's a little difficult not to touch the paper. Alright, so I'm sure this just looks very scribbly, but I feel like once we start adding water, this is going to become a little bit more taking shape. Let's try just using a nice round brush, nothing too large. And I'm going to start with this tree over here. This is kind of interesting. I don't want to fully melt away my pencil strokes. I want this to be, you know, kind of like halfway between watercolor and pencil. So we're not going to overwork those pencil lines. But this is our big tree. I'm wondering if I'm going to have to eventually add in some more color to kind of differentiate some of my pieces. It's kind of hard to tell what's what at the moment, but hopefully once we start adding water to this, that water is going to make some of these parts kind of come alive. Alright, so this is definitely challenging, definitely interesting. I feel like I wish the green was a little more green, so it was more apparent, like what was tree and stuff. Let's see what this pencil looks like. Ooh, wet. I actually really like it with dipped in straight into the water. That made it a lot more green. Maybe we'll just kind of let some green foliage dance around the top of his page. I like that. I like the dipping it straight into the water. That was, fun. And what's the point of art if it's not fun for the artist? I'm definitely a believer in play and having fun. Let's try to get some stronger colors in here. I feel like I don't know what I want to do here. This is like a very gray rock that's kind of diverting the water. Maybe we'll just kind of do that. And then with my water. So one thing I am excited to try with these watercolor pencils, these graphite pencils, is using them for sketching before my watercolor painting, and then having those pencil marks kind of melt away more versus regular graphite, not being affected by water. So that'll definitely be interesting to see how I can use them as just sketching, and then hopefully they'll melt better into the actual paint versus having harsh pencil marks. I feel like this was all a little too wet, so this paper does stay wet for kind of a long time. My blue is not bluing enough. Let's try dipping the blue into the water. So I feel like I like the way this looks, but it's not super apparent that it's a waterfall. I need to carve out some better rock shapes so we can kind of get a better idea of what this is. Like I said, kind of towing the line between abstract and more representational. So I'm going to let this dry and kind of see what I want to do with this next. Alright, our painting is dry. Sometimes when I don't really know what to do next or how to kind of go forward, I do like to introduce ink. So I'm going to try kind of inking this a little bit and seeing if we can bring out some details. The watercolor graphite pencils are quite light. So it is a little bit of a challenge to work with as a medium where I'm not really introducing anything else. This pen is a little thin. Let's try, this is a 0.1. Let's see what other sizes I have. All right, let's try a 0.5. And we're just gonna use that to carve out some details. some individual rock shapes. Over here I had like a big sheet of rock. This was, as I said, called Quarry Falls, and it's very much like the river almost comes to a trickle as it's going down these huge rock formations, where kind of after this the river is flowing a little bit, you know, more river like. And this is one section where we really lose a lot of the kind of movement of the river. I was like, oh, this looks like a cool river. We could, like, you know, kayak down it or something. And then we get to this section and I'm like, ew, that's why there's not kayak rental places over here, because this is definitely not a navigable waterway. There was also some quite big falls later on. These ones weren't too big, but there were some really, really tall falls, like, you know, 50 feet or whatever, that would probably be quite dangerous if you tried to, you know, kayak or something. So we did lots of painting, lots of hiking on this trip to North Carolina, but did not get in the water. Now I'm going to just kind of see what I can do with my pencils one last time. This is a waterproof ink, so we can, you know, go over this with water now that we have defined some of those areas more. I was surprised at how blue this water looked. It was a quite cloudy day, but this water looked very, very blue. So I'm going to try to really capture that with this blue graphite pencil. I really want to add white to get some of that, like, waterfall, you know, foaming and stuff, but I don't know if I want to add in another thing since we already added in the ink. We're going for simplicity here. And then maybe we'll just add in a little bit more of the red on some of our rocks. I feel like that's just the light. I'm like, that's not showing up, but it does have that shiny quality like graphite pencil, so it's kind of hard to see with my overhead light. Well, this was definitely a fun medium, watercolor adjacent medium to experiment with. I'm interested on how other people use these. It does recommend, you know, water with spray bottle, picking up the color with a brush. We tried that. I definitely don't have that like brown color in my palette that this is showing. Mine are gray. That's interesting. So this colors on the little pamphlet are different than what came in the tin, so whatever. But I like how this turned out. I like kind of using this as a sketching medium that I can then add watercolor to. I wish there was a little bit more variation in my colors, but I get that they are, you know, graphite, so they are somewhat limited. When they're dry, they all look pretty similar. It's very hard to tell the difference between the colors. But then wet, they are quite different. So that is interesting. I'm excited to try these as a sketching tool with my watercolor, and just as something that's really portable, since they are, you know, in this nice little travel case, and I can always sketch with them and then add water later or something. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about how these watercolor graphite pencils work. I definitely enjoyed playing with them.